In the year 1917, with the world torn apart by the First World War, an extraordinary event unfolded in the United States that is rarely mentioned in history books. It wasn't a battle or a diplomatic deal, but a riot, an eruption of anger and desperation that has been called one of the largest labor uprisings in American history, the Bisbee Deportation. Picture this: a small mining town in Arizona, Bisbee, located deep in the desert near the Mexican border. At the time, Bisbee was booming. The copper mines there were critical to the war effort. Copper was needed for ammunition, wiring, and countless other supplies. Without it, the Allied armies would suffer. But while the mining companies profited, the workers, the men who risked their lives underground, faced brutal conditions. Miners worked 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, often in dangerous and suffocating shafts where cave-ins, toxic gases, and deadly accidents were part of daily life. Pay was meager, safety regulations were almost non-existent, and discrimination was rampant. Many of the miners were immigrants, Mexican, Slavic, and Eastern European men, treated as second-class laborers compared to native-born Americans. Tensions began to rise as the Industrial Workers of the World, the IWW, also known as the Wobblies, started organizing in Bisbee. The IWW was a radical labor union that believed in direct action, strikes, and solidarity across race and nationality. In June 1917, with America freshly entered into the First World War, the IWW called for a strike in Bisbee. Their demands were simple: better pay, safer conditions, and an end to discrimination. But for the powerful Phelps Dodge Mining Corporation and for the U.S. government desperate for copper, this strike was nothing less than treason. The idea of shutting down the mines in wartime terrified company executives, who feared both economic loss and the spread of radical labor ideas. So they took matters into their own hands. On July 12, 1917, before dawn, a posse of about 2,000 armed men, miners loyal to the company, local businessmen, and hastily deputized citizens, marched through Bisbee. They carried rifles, shotguns, and pistols. They went door to door, pulling suspected strikers and union supporters from their homes at gunpoint. Some were beaten, others were dragged through the streets. By mid-morning, over 1,200 men had been rounded up. They were forced into a line and marched through the desert heat, jeered at by crowds. Then came the shocking part. These men, strikers, sympathizers, and in some cases even bystanders who happened to be accused, were herded into cattle cars. 23 boxcars, meant for livestock, not humans, were packed tight with men in the scorching July heat. Armed guards stood by, rifles loaded, as the train lurched forward. Its destination? The New Mexico desert. For 16 hours, the train rattled across barren land with no food, no water, and no bathroom facilities for the deported men. When it finally stopped, the men were left in a desolate stretch of desert near Hermanas, New Mexico, miles from any settlement. They were abandoned there, warned never to return to Bisbee. Some staggered away on foot, others collapsed from exhaustion and heat. Eventually, sympathetic locals and U.S. Army troops rescued them, but the message had been delivered. Bisbee would tolerate no labor unrest. The event became known as the Bisbee Deportation. National newspapers covered it, but reactions were divided. Many in business circles praised the action as patriotic, a defense of the nation's copper supply during wartime. Others, including President Woodrow Wilson's administration, were disturbed by the lawlessness of it all. A federal investigation later declared the deportation illegal, a violation of the Constitution. And yet, no one was ever punished. The mining companies faced no consequences. The men who organized and carried out the deportation walked free. The victims of the deportation? Many never returned to Bisbee. They lost their jobs, their homes, their families' livelihoods. For years, the town lived under a cloud of fear.
Unions were effectively destroyed, and labor organizing in Bisbee was silenced. Today, the Bisbee Deportation is barely remembered outside of Arizona, but it raises important questions. In a time of crisis, when the needs of industry and government collide with the rights of workers, whose side does history take? In 1917, it was clear: copper and profit outweighed justice. And yet, the story also highlights the courage of those workers who dared to resist.
Their struggle, though crushed, was part of a broader movement that eventually brought Americans the rights we take for granted today: safer workplaces, the 8-hour workday, and protections for union organizing. The Bisbee Deportation remains a haunting reminder of how fragile those rights once were, and how quickly they can be stripped away when fear, patriotism, and corporate power join forces.